To try and get to the story about Lazarus. So we're trying to get to chapter 11. All right. So we're going to look at some different points, different things today. Should I have my clicker? Oh, there we go. And I tried to get my Bible open so we could read through as much as we could. But at the end of the day, I thought when we're covering chapters 5 through 10, I don't want to rush through them and ignore them because they're such beautiful chapters. There's so many wonderful things to say. But I got to thinking while I was reading them, I said, man, good preacher could probably spend a month on one of these chapters. And so there's no way we could really do a great job just on one of the chapters just in Sunday school. So we're going to try and do the best we can to hit the main points of them as we go through. But if you haven't read them, then make sure to look through them, read them carefully. There's some of the best parts, not just because of the miracles that we see, but because of the teachings that Jesus has in these sections. So let's take a peek at them really quickly. So remember last week, Kevin covered the Samaritan woman healing the official's son, and then the healing at the pool, right? Talking about the miracles of Jesus and Jesus revealing who he was through these miracles, right? So we're going to continue that thought a little bit today, right, with some of the other miracles that Jesus does during this time, okay? So number one, let's talk about the miracles, right? And after we're done talking about the miracles, I want to talk about the opposition that people had to Jesus' teachings. And then after that, I want to talk about the truth that Jesus brings, okay? And we'll do all that, hopefully in 25 minutes, and then we'll get to Lazarus, right? So we'll see if we can do that really quickly. But as always, your comments are always welcome. So let's talk about it really quickly. So in John 6, right, we have Jesus, he feeds the 5,000. Remember that one? Everybody remember that one from Sunday school? Okay. And then we have him walking on water because the people wanted to make Jesus king, right? So he kind of walked away from them, walked to his disciples, right? Talked to them. There was some grumbling in this chapter. Then later on in 9, so I'm going to skip around a little bit between 5 to 10, so kind of keep up with me. Then in 9, Jesus heals the man who was born blind. Remember how he heals him?
He stand.
That's right. Yeah, he puts the mud on his eyes, and that's how he heals him, okay? So, again, what's the purpose of Jesus performing these miracles? Why does he do that?
So they listen to his teaching.
All right, so they'll listen to his teachings, right? Okay, so are we still in a society where it's, I've got to see it to believe it?
Well, I'm trying to remember what the Father can do now.
Okay, right. He's trying to show, right, that this is the power of God, right, and God has given me the ability to do these miracles. Awesome. Okay.
He's showing that he cares, which is, by taking care of somebody's physical needs, it shows that you care about them in that way, and also he cares about them spiritually.
Okay, so it shows he cares about them spiritually too. All right, awesome. So let's look really quickly at John 9, 3 through 5, right? This is what Jesus said. He was asked, right, is this man steeped in sin? What's the deal? Why was he born blind? His reply was, neither this man nor his parents sinned, said Jesus. But this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. As long as it is day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night is coming, when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. So a great, beautiful passage we talked earlier, several weeks ago, about Jesus being the light, correct? Okay. What is he saying right here about being the light right here? What is he trying to get across to us?
He's alive or light?
Light, L-I-G-H-T.
The way he works during the day and not during the night when he sleeps.
Okay,
The
so,
way he prefers to do his work by light.
right? So metaphorically, what is he talking about, right? What is he talking about the day and the night right here?
He wants people to see what he does, I guess.
Okay, yeah, he does want people to see what's happening, right? So why is Jesus called the light, though? Is what I guess I'm trying to get at.
He's the way in the path.
He's the way in the path. Donna?
I was just going to say, he's the light in the world of darkness.
Right. He's the light in the world of darkness. The world is darkness, but I am the light, right? While I am here with you, right? I am the light here with you. I am trying to show you guys the way, right? With my teachings, with my healings, with these miracles, I'm trying to show you the truth, right? That's what he's getting at, okay? We haven't talked about this a ton, but he says this several times throughout John, right? My time has not yet come. Do you remember the first time he says this? To his mom, right? All right, hold on one second, one at a time, okay? So what about his mom? What did he say to his mom?
When she asked him to help out at the wedding.
All right, so ask him to help out his wedding. My time has not yet come. Lots of times in chapter 7, right? When people are trying to, grab hold of Jesus, they're trying to arrest them. Remember, there's the plot to kill Jesus kind of happening at this point, okay? But they could not lay hands on him because his time had not yet come. Everybody remember that?
Yeah.
What does that mean? My time is
He
not
hasn't
yet
performed
come.
all the duties that he performed everything he's supposed to do.
Okay, so he has more things to do,
Well,
right?
he was preparing the apostles, and he hadn't taught the apostles enough to, they needed a lot of teaching, and they weren't ready at this point. in
Okay.
his life.
Right, so I still have more to teach, I still have more to do, you guys aren't ready yet, I still need to be the light for you guys so we can get through it, correct? Okay? What's it leading up to then? What does he mean by his time? When his time comes, what's he referring to?
Meaning to go back to the Father in heaven.
Okay, so he's going back to his Father in heaven, right? So the first time he says this is in John 12:23, which obviously we're not getting to today, right? But he says, right, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified, right? And he's talking about, my death and my resurrection, correct? Right? So I think it's very interesting to see how that's coming. All right, so the next little part to look at is he's trying to get people to believe him, correct? And these people don't know Jesus. He's trying to tell them, I'm the light. He's trying to help them understand that kind of idea. So why should people believe Jesus? I mean, we believe Jesus, a couple of thousand years later because we believe
Did he endure the miracle? That's why they believe?
he's the Son of God. Well, that's why we said he's doing the miracle, so that people can believe, right? Okay? But is there any special reason, right, why people should believe Jesus?
Because if you don't, you will die.
Okay, that's true. That's true. Hopefully you're trying to go for eternal life. That's right. But during this time period, there are doubters, correct? And there's going to be lots of people that don't believe, that struggle, that have a hard time. Okay? So, do you remember this back from your rhetoric class or talking about this a long time ago? Ethos, pathos, logos thing? I think I've talked about it a little bit before, right? If you talk about the rhetorical triangle, remember rhetoric is how you convince someone that you're correct, right? There are three ways to do that, right? Ethos, that's being the, kind of ethical appeal, right? You can believe me, you can believe my character, I'm a trustworthy person, right? Then you have pathos, that's kind of like the emotional appeal, right? Believe me because these are strong emotional reasons why it's important. Then you have logos, those are the logical reasons, right? It's kind of, just inductive, deductive reasoning, that kind of thing, right? Jesus kind of hits those points. But in John 5, we have this section where Jesus is trying to explain his authority, right? Now, I'm sure you've told this to your kids, because I've told it to my kids, correct? Right? Well, why do I have to do that, Dad? Because I said so, right? Does that work? It didn't work for you guys? Hold on one second. Let's do the parent thing, okay? So did it work for you guys when you asked your kids, do it because I said so? It did, yeah. It works for some of you. Donna's like, maybe not, right? Technically, that's a logical fallacy, right? If the only reason someone should listen to you is because that you said so, then what kind of authority do you have, right? Well, let's talk about Jesus. What's Jesus' authority?
Jesus only got authority of the Father.
Right. I mean, he is the Lord and creator of the universe, right? I mean, so when the Lord and creator of the universe says, well, you should believe me because, I'm God, doesn't he have the authority? Yes. Okay? But there's still people in chapter 7, right, who will not listen to Jesus, right, who grumble, right, who, say, you're Mary's son. I don't even know who you are. You're the Son of God, right? Why are you telling me this stuff, right? I mean, they don't believe him, right, for several reasons. Why does Jesus have authority in chapter 5? What is he talking about? You might want to flip there really quickly. Let's take a peek at that. Number one, if you're in a trial, right, and you're trying to tell someone the truth about, why you should believe me, this is my story, it's correct, and all that kind of stuff, witnesses are usually brought forth during the trial, correct? Who are the witnesses that came forth earlier on to testify about Jesus?
What about judging a man? Jesus talked about that too.
That's true. Well, let's talk about the witness first, okay? Like who is the witness? Who's John, right? John comes first, right? John's the one who paves the way, right? You guys believe John. John told you about me, right? Okay, there's number one, right? So in Jewish society, Jewish law, how many witnesses were you supposed to have? 2, right? Let's have 2. At least in this scripture it says 2. Maybe in some other sections it says 3. All right? So Jesus says, well, who is the other witness for me? Who are the other ones that can help testify for me? Right? Well, it should be my Father, right? Because what am I doing to show you that I have authority? Miracles, right? I mean, that's what he just said, right? I've shown you these miracles so that you can believe, right? I'm doing the works of the Father. No one could do these works, right, unless they were sent
Yeah,
from
they
God.
didn't told him that.
Yeah, that's true, right? And so when he's giving this testimony, do the Jewish leaders believe? No, right? They're arguing against him. They're saying you don't have the authority. They're mad at him, more or less, it boils down to, because he's performing the miracles when?
They call it blasphemy, though.
But why? Because he's performing it during Sabbath, right? You know, he's
Yeah,
performing the
man,
miracles
man,
during
walk on
Sabbath.
Sunday and
Okay.
that was-
I can't do it if you're talking over me every time, okay? It's okay, right? It's just hard for me to concentrate and do it if you're interrupting me every 5 seconds, all right? Okay? So at any rate, right, that's the deal, right? That's the deal, right? So he's trying to get the idea out there, right, that this is why you need to listen to me. So let's talk about the opposition really quick, because there's a lot, right? There's a lot. We have it in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, right? In 5, we have the opposition happening because people aren't listening to Jesus' authority. They don't believe the witness, John, that came before, because he's doing the miracles during the Sabbath, right? And then in 6, right, this is after he's walked on the water and he's talking about, I am the bread of life, right? People have a hard time with that teaching because they take it quite literally, don't they? When they say, you know, I'm the bread of life, you know, whoever eats my flesh, you know, can have eternal life. He'd earlier talked about the water, which is a hard teaching because people are like, well, I'm not going to eat your arm, right? I mean, that sounds a little weird, right? Okay? And people are grumbling, right? Even among the 12, Jesus pretty much calls out who at this point? Do you remember? Well, who's the one of the 12 who's not the good one? Judas, right? He calls out Judas at this point. He says, one of you is the devil, right? He doesn't say it's Judas, but, you know, we kind of know John talks about that in retrospect, right? And at this point, when Jesus makes that statement, many of his disciples leave him. Now, do the 12 leave him? No, they stay with him, right? But it says that many of the disciples leave him at this point when he's talking about that. So again, that's a hard teaching. That's what they say, right? Then, at the festival, right? His brothers, Jesus' brothers, don't really want him to go to the festival, right? They tell him, no, maybe not a good idea. You know, you get in trouble, but if you're going to be a public figure, you know, you should not do it in secret, right? You should show up. So Jesus does show up, but he does it, you know, kind of in a, you know, not a direct manner, right? Okay, kind of secretly. And people are still grumbling with him at the festival, right? John 8, right? People argue with Jesus over his teachings, the same thing he's talked about before, and they try to stone him, right? And Jesus says, well, for which one of these miracles are you going to stone me? You're stoning me because I perform miracles? Right? That doesn't make any sense, does it? Right? No, right? They said, we're stoning you because you claim to be what? The Son of God, right? That's why we're going to stone you, for the blasphemy, right? So again, people are not listening to him. He's trying to explain he's the light, but they're not listening to him. Shoot, he heals the blind man, right? And people know this guy's been born blind, correct? Right? And do they want to believe it? No. They question the blind man 3 times. The Jewish leaders question him 3 times. Who did this to you? Oh, this guy. You know, who was that? I
They
don't
think
know.
he's
Right? What's that?
They think he's a prophet.
Yeah, the first he says he's a prophet. That's right. Okay?
Jesus goes on and tells them he's not a prophet.
And he says they're not, right? But then later in 9, the Jewish leaders still won't believe this guy. They ask the guy's parents, right? Do the parents kind of stick up for their son?
They're afraid technology.
Right, yeah, it's kind of like the Seinfeld episode with the soup Nazi, right? Like, no temple for you. So they said, well, ask him. He's of age. You know, ask him, right? So, you know, are trying to ask him what's going on. And again, you know, they're saying, well, only God, you know, only God can perform these miracles. Only God can do this healing. So why are you trying to say this man is not God? You know, the blind man sticks up for Jesus. And Jesus finds him later again and talks to them, right? And lets them know about the teaching. It's kind of like with the last guy that got healed at the pool, okay? So, John 10, right? The Pharisees don't understand. They start calling Jesus demon-possessed, right? Saying that, you know, you cannot be who you claim that you are. And this is when he starts talking about the parable of the Good Shepherd, remember, right? You know, in the parable of the Good Shepherd, right? My sheep know my what? My voice, right? They know my voice. So the people who are going to be called to me know when I call them, right? And these Pharisees, these non-believers, these people who've been grumbling, right? Do they know the truth when they hear it? No, or they don't recognize the truth, whichever way that you want to say it, right? So why do people reject the truth then? What do you think?
Well, Jesus told them, my word has no place in you.
So they're not going to be with Jesus no matter what?
Well, he told them that my word has no place with you. They had a problem with their hearts.
Right, exactly, right? I mean, Jesus knew, right? He knew they weren't going to listen, but he's still trying to teach them anyway. Yeah, right? Do you think people are still like that today? Yes, absolutely. Well, why can't people listen to the truth? It's inconvenient. That was a book, wasn't it? An Inconvenient Truth? I don't know what it was about, but I just remember the title of something, right? I mean, sure, right? People, don't want to listen to something if it doesn't affect their worldview, right? That can't be right. That's not the truth, right? What do you think, Zach?
I also think the devil works pretty hard to confuse the truth. He's really good at inserting doubt and maybe making you trying to twist the truth so that even when you hear it, it doesn't seem right to you.
Yeah, you have that thing, that tickles your ears that seems like it's, well, maybe it could be this or maybe it could be that. I mean, we do have, uncertainty, right, that hits a lot of us, right? So how do we discover the truth then? Where can we find it? All right, so studying, right, that's going to help us, number one, right? Talking to people who are older, right? Hopefully that have been through these trials, right? Been through these tribulations that can help us out. Okay, right?
What about praying for it and asking for the book?
What?
What?
I didn't hear you.
Well, praying for it and asking.
Oh, praying for it and asking for it. Yes, praying for guidance, right? Praying for what's going on. Yes, that's an excellent point. Okay, all those things. Gene?
We have to humble ourselves and follow the example of little children.
That's a great point. Sometimes you can't just assume that you know it just because, I've been around or whatever, right? You don't know what you're talking about because you're a young kid or whatever, right? Now, sometimes I think, too, they're, because I teach high school, I've told you that before, right? I mean, they're, 14-year-olds that think they know everything. You might know some of them, right? You don't know anything, Mr. Green, right? I was born 14 years ago. I got this all figured out. I've got it all figured out. So you need to listen to me. So, you always have to take it with a grain of salt a little bit, right? But yes, there's a problem, right? Whether it be with people's hearts, whether it be with people, not understanding, whether people, not wanting to face a hard truth in their life that goes different to what they may think about.
You got to see the heart first, yeah.
Did Jesus speak up and tell people things they didn't want to hear? Yes. And that's oftentimes necessary. I mean, it's hard, right? Jesus said, hey, I didn't come to please everyone, right? I'm here to tell you the truth, right? If you try to please everyone, if you try to, keep silent during times when the truth needs to be spoken, right? And you let a lie fester, if you leave a gap in something, something will fill it, right? You want to fill it with the truth. You want to fill it with the light, right? Which is Jesus is trying to do. Yes, ma'am?
Yeah, the truth is conflict or against our sinful nature. And
That's a beautiful statement, yeah.
They just want us to deny our own nature.
Yeah, deny our own nature, right? Sometimes we have to go against, right, what we naturally want to do. That's a great point. All right, now, the truth of Jesus. All right, this is the last little part of the 5 chapters we're trying to hurry through really quickly, okay? There's a lot more of the truth here, right, than people grumbling, at least in the gospel that we're reading, right? Number one, in chapter 5 is so great. I mean, we could probably do 2 weeks just on chapter 5. And maybe when we do the recap, we'll go back and look at that, because that's when Jesus is talking about his authority, about why you should believe me, right? But number one, we have the testimony of John the Baptist, right? Okay, and you should believe me. I'm basically bringing forth all the prophecies that have been written about me before, right? That's the other testimony, right, that Jesus is referring to in chapter 5. I mean, so it's an amazing point. They argue with him and say, well, okay, you believe Moses. You're saying that, you're the son of Abraham and Moses. They believed in me. They believed in God, right? So why aren't you, right? They get really angry when Jesus says, I knew who? I knew Abraham. That's right. Okay? I knew Abraham. Okay? All right? Abraham was happy to see me. That really sets them off. They don't like hearing that at all. Okay? All right? Number next. All right? After the people saw the signs Jesus performed, they began to say, surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world. So again, just like we talked about, right? When the miracles happen, some people do believe, correct? Right? Some people do recognize the voice of the shepherd. Right? They're like, yeah, I should listen to him, right? He is the real deal, okay? Right? In 7, when Jesus is arguing kind of in front of the Jewish leaders, who sticks up for Jesus? Which one of the Jewish leaders kind of sticks up for him?
Nicodemus?
Nicodemus, yeah, right? He's the one that came to talk to Jesus earlier, right? He sticks up for Jesus and says, well, is it our practice to just, convict people when we haven't listened to their side of the story? Is that what we're going to do? I mean, Nicodemus is the one who speaks up, all right? In 8, right? I'd have to flip to 8. I tried to mark all the verses for us so that we could go through it quickly. I don't remember 8. Oh, that's when people are arguing with Jesus. They're attempting to stone him, right? And that's when he says, again, kind of like the Good Shepherd kind of statement again, which one of these miracles are you going to stone me for, right? What have I done wrong, right? So that's what he's talking about in 8. And this is something Seth brought up, which I thought was a great point. When Jesus says, very truly, I tell you, he says it 3 times in that one section that you were asking about the other day. It's roughly 70 times throughout Scripture. I think in John, he does it roughly like 35 times. If someone's trying to say, very truly I tell you, truly I tell you, Jesus says this over again, when he's getting ready to give a teaching, when he's getting ready to explain something, right? Why does he say that first?
Get their attention?
I think, yeah, it's to get their attention, right? To make sure you're listening up. I mean, I was joking around and, said the kind of Southern translation is, my dad would tell me something like, now I'm going to tell you something. If my dad already started off something, well, I'm going to tell you something, usually it's something I needed to pay attention to because it's true, right? You may not believe it, right? But I'm going to tell you something, and you really need to listen to this. And here's someone who's been through it, he's lived through it, he understands, right? And you need to listen to me because of this. This is, again, Lord, the master creator of the universe. He's getting ready to tell you the truth. He is the light, right? And I'm trying to tell you what the deal is. So listen to me when I say this, right? Make sense? So that's what I thought it meant, when he said that, to answer your question from the other day, all right? A couple more in John 9, right? Plenty of other instances where Jesus is trying to, again, mention the truth to people, right? In John 10, this is one of my favorite parts, right? Where he's doing the parable of the Good Shepherd, right? I am the Good Shepherd. I know my sheep and my sheep know me. Just as the Father knows me and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen, people that aren't going to listen to me, right? I must bring them also. Hopefully they will, right? They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. The reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down on my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father, right? I mean, an amazing statement about the truth, about his authority, right? About why Jesus is here. Whew. All right. So, coming to the end of all those 5 chapters that we really, really rushed through, and I know I'm going really fast, all right? What does Jesus want everyone to know then and now, right? What is he trying to get at?
There is anything now?
Yeah, right? That I am the way, the truth, and the life, and that no one comes to the Father except through me, right? That's what Jesus wants people to know, right? That's what he's trying to get there. Whew. Okay, so that was my sprint through 5 chapters, all right? Did we do okay? All right, and like I said, I know we just rushed through a lot of scripture, right? I'm just trying to do the catch-up version, all right, that Kevin left me with. I'm still going to give Kevin a hard time about daggone leaving me 5 chapters to get through that he was supposed to do about 4 of. But that's okay. All right, we made it through it, okay? So there is a lot more there. All right, there's a lot more to go. There's a lot more to study. I encourage you to read those 5 chapters, and I would personally like to spend a little more time in 5, all right, when we maybe have some time at the very end of the class. Okay, so let's talk about Lazarus. Okay, let's get to that. So we're going to be in 11, right, for the rest of the day, right? We go a little bit over. That should be okay, but we got a good 20, 25 minutes, give or take, to talk about this one, all right? So in John 11, right, we have the death, right? We have the resurrection of Lazarus, right? And this is kind of, in some ways, if you will, like the ultimate miracle, right, that Jesus is performing, right, with Lazarus, okay? Remember, he's going to Bethany. Now, in Bethany, did he have kind of a good reputation?
Yeah, because he didn't want to really need to go there, but he got distracted.
Well, they tried to stone him there last time he was there, right? Yeah, these are the same people in chapter 8, right, where they tried to stone. They've been arguing with Jesus, right? They didn't really care for him, right? So they were kind of after him. So, I mean, maybe not the best reputation. But at the same time, just like in the parable of the Good Shepherd, there are people that love Jesus, that believe in him, even in Bethany, right? And so do you remember Mary and Martha, who they were?
Those are the ladies that tried to get
Okay, so Lazarus' sisters, that's right, okay. Do you remember any story about them, like in Luke, where we'd heard anything about them?
They got argued about
Mary
who was helping him the most.
That's right, you know, who kind of gets upset at their sisters, at Martha or Mary? Yeah, so Martha's the one that gets upset because Mary is, you know, kind of hanging out with Jesus, and Martha's like, you know, rushing around trying to get everything ready, you know, for the party, all the people that are over. And what does Jesus say to her? Do you remember? That Mary has chosen, that's right, the better, right? Mary has chosen the better, right? Don't concern yourself with all this rushing around. And it's not like rebuking her per se, but he's just saying, you know, Mary is understanding what's important right now. She's hanging out with me. You know, you trying to mess around with all this temporary worldly stuff, it isn't such a big deal, right? And I think you said that Mary is the one who later on in 12, right, she's the one that takes her hair, I got very short hair, right, and she's the one that does what? That's right, she pours the perfume and she wipes Jesus' feet. And this is after Lazarus has been raised from the dead, okay, right? So that happens in the chapter right after this one, okay, right? So it says in John 11 that Jesus loved them, right? Jesus cared for them, right? And Lazarus, right? Jesus cared for them, right? You know, in John 11:35, right? That's where we have, remember, the shortest verse in the Bible. That's what? Jesus wept, right? Everybody remembers that one. That's an easy one to remember, right? Easiest memory verse in the world, right? So, why does Jesus weep? We'll get to that more in a second, but why?
He really didn't want to go help Martha and Mary at that time.
Well, I think he did. I mean, Martha and Mary did write to him,
He
right?
did go, yeah, eventually, but at first, but he didn't want to do it. He said he ain't got time to do it.
Is that what he said? Let's look. Let's see. Look and see if Jesus said, "I don't have time for you right now." Okay, I don't think that's what he said. Okay, so Jesus does get the message, right, from Martha and Mary, right? Does get the message, and this is what we were talking about earlier with the Mary choosing the better path, right? So sorry, phone's not cooperating right now. When he gets the message, right, what does Jesus tell his followers?
He's not dead.
Right? He's not dead. He's what? He's asleep, right? He's sleeping, right? His sickness will not end in death. Notice, for the God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it, right? So in some ways, right, when Jesus hears, right, that the one that you love is sick, right, yeah, he takes his time. He doesn't go until how many days have passed?
3 days.
Okay, I think he waits 2, right? And then Lazarus has been dead how long before Jesus raises him? 4, right? So, you know, why isn't Jesus in a hurry?
He wants to make sure he's good and dead.
All right, make sure he's good then. All right, everybody knows he's been dead. Right, that's right. All right, okay. So it's not, you know, a complete, you know, like, okay, it just happened a couple hours ago. All right, so yeah, that could be part of it. All right, any other ideas? What do you think, Don?
I think he's getting ready to make a humongous point for all of them to see.
It is. I mean, it's a huge point, right? It's the kind of like I was teasing, the ultimate miracle. What do you think?
I think what she says is really true, because the Jews believed as long as there was blood in the body,
Okay.
that there was still the potential for life. So they were just waiting for that process to fully be. So it wasn't an accident. No, it wasn't that we made a mistake. He was really, truly, absolutely dead.
Right.
So there'd be no mistake whatsoever.
There was no doubt. I mean, there's that dead ringer thing. Remember in the 19th century where people would tie a string to somebody's foot when they buried him in the graveyard, and someone, awake was because you literally would wait around for someone to
And it's
wake
why-
up.
That's why the Jews always would drain meat of blood, because they believed that there was life in the blood.
I didn't know that. So they would drain people of the blood?
No, animals.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, all right. I thought we were talking Egyptian thing. They just bled them all. All right, okay. But yeah, they even say his sisters warned Jesus, right? And I'm skipping ahead a little bit. They say it's going to be
Yeah.
really a bad smell. You don't want to go in there. You don't want to move that stone away because he's been dead for 4 days, right? I mean, they know all that, okay? So when Jesus hears this, right, and I already read this, right, the sickness will not end in death, no, it's for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. Again, the reason I'm doing this is to show you all this is a big deal, right? This is the power that I have. This is the authority that I have. This is the truth that I have, right? I mean, it's something to get excited about. This is what Jesus has been preaching and talking about, right? With the water and the bread for so long, and now he's getting ready to show people, right? And this is before he lays down his life, okay? So he waits 2 days. The disciples are kind of leery about going because remember, like I said, this is the place where they tried to stone Jesus earlier, right? And so when Jesus hears that, right, what's his reply? What does he say in John 11, 14 and 15? Right? Because he kind of said that, Lazarus was sleeping, but in 14 and 15, right, he plainly says to them, right, Lazarus is dead, and for your sake, I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. So let us go to him. I am glad I was not there. I am glad I was not there to heal him. Right? I'm glad I'm able to now show you all, right, the power that I have, right, the authority that I have, right. I mean, again, an amazing statement, right, a neat thing. So now he finally decides in his own time, right, to go and show people, right, the miracle he's getting ready to perform, all right. So, been dead for 4 days, right, already established that, all right. So when we first get down there, Martha comes to Jesus first, right? Any significance in Martha showing up first versus Mary? Might just be me thinking about that, but I thought that was interesting.
Mary still had a headway, I think, somewhere.
Mary is with the mourners, right? So Mary's with the mourners. Martha's the first one that goes out to greet Jesus, right? Now earlier, right, who had been the one to hang out with Jesus first? Mary, right? But now Martha is, right? Which I think is, kind of a neat thing. Whether maybe, I don't want to say she learned a lesson, but how important Jesus was. What do you think?
I'm not entirely sure, but I noticed in verse 5 it says Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. And I thought that was interesting too, considering we always think of Mary and Jesus as being real tight, you know? And Martha doesn't get a lot of love, all that stuff. So I thought
Martha.
she was listed and Mary wasn't, and then now that she's the one who comes out to greet him first is interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was too. And I think it's wrong to, I know we think okay, she doesn't get the love, because of that story in Luke kind of thing. And maybe she is kind of the one. But don't we all get in that, where we get so busy with everything, we forget about what's important?
Also, Martha was a take charge person, and she approached Jesus and she said, my brother is dead, if only you had been here, he wouldn't have died, but I know you can raise him.
That's right.
And she took the initiative, she was the doer.
She was the doer, and she came and she said that, right? Which was so interesting. I like that she says that if you had been here, right? If you had been here, right, my brother would not have died. But I know even now that God will give you whatever you ask, right? And Jesus says, your brother will rise again. Now, Martha's confused, right? Martha doesn't think 15 minutes. Martha says what? Well, I know he will rise again, the resurrection at the last day. right? I mean, that's what Martha's like, okay, you know. I mean, she's not expecting, you know, what's getting ready to happen, right? Right? Neither does Mary. You know, Mary comes to talk to Jesus next, right? And she's still in with the mourners, right? You know, people who are grieving Lazarus, right? And so as she goes to talk to Jesus, right, her reply is almost identical, right? If you had been here, then I know my brother wouldn't have died. Right? And remember, Jesus had said earlier, right, you know, several verses earlier, right, I'm glad I was not there, right, so that you can witness, right, God's power, right? So again, all part of God's plan. I mean, really, 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 really cool. So Mary takes him to the tomb, all right? And as Mary is taking him to the tomb, okay, Jesus sees her weeping, and the Jews who have come along with her, they're also weeping, right? Everyone's sad, right, because of the mourning period of Lazarus. I don't know how you guys are. If I go to a funeral, I'm usually crying no matter what. Like, it doesn't matter. I may not even be like super close with the person, but I'm still probably like crying because, you know, it just hits me that way a little bit. We were joking around at a faculty meeting yesterday. There's a gentleman who was retiring. He'd been working there for 48 years. That's a long time. He deserved to retire, right? Mr. Bobby, he's an amazing part of the athletic program over there at Somerville High School, but he's getting ready to retire. And I'd known him, and I'd seen him, and I talked to him, you know, several times. So I was really happy for him. You know, I was not sad for Bobby retiring. But the lady next to me, she was crying her eyes out. She's like, I don't even know this guy, but it's so sad. I'm like, oh, it's not sad. If you knew Bobby, he's ready to retire, man. He's ready, right? This is a happy day for him, right? But Jesus, right, was deeply moved in spirit and troubled, right? Now that, to me, is such a huge statement, right? I mean, what do you guys think about that? When Jesus sees the mourning, right? When Jesus sees how upset Mary is, right? What do you think, Donna?
He has so much compassion. Just as you said, you might not know somebody that just passed away. When you see other people crying, it touches your heart. You're sort of mourn with them.
Yeah.
Because you see their hearts are broken. And I think that's, when Jesus knew what he was about to do and everything was going to be okay.
Right.
But to see the sadness and the sorrow in them, he had compassion. So his heart ached with theirs.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's what I was thinking. He knew what he was getting ready to do. He's like, all right, you know, I'm going to take care of this in just a little bit, but he's still moved, right? He's still compassionate.
Brother, though, ain't it?
What's that?
That's his brother, ain't? Couldn't have a little bit of feelings towards him?
Yes, he said he loved Lazarus, right? And Jesus wept, right? In the very next verse. I mean, you know, and he is saddened about it, right? But again, if you know you're going to raise someone, right, you know, okay, I'm getting ready to make this right in just a little while, right? It's still such a cool thing that Jesus empathizes, right, with people's hearts. He cares about people so much, right, that it moves him to see people troubled, right, because of the love that they have for this person, for Mary, for this family.
Well, I think, I had always kind of imagined that, so he had to wait 2 days.
Right.
And delay that, even though, so there had to be some of that. Mary and Martha do kind of, had you done this, had you, you know, so there's some frustration in him.
Okay.
That he knew he had to wait, but he's looking at people that he cares about, and they're not understanding why he had to do, you know.
So
That's kind of hurt to, yeah, I could have. You don't understand. Not even your parents do see. You don't see the full picture. So you have to go through some hurt, some anguish that you think I could have alleviated.
So you're reading it more like they're a little frustrated with him when they say, if you had been here, I know it would have happened, but I know you can still fix them. Okay.
I'm thinking maybe he's crying in part because I had to wait 2 days. I had to watch them cry, know that they have been through a lot of agony.
So kind of like a parent saying, hey, you got to learn a hard lesson kind of thing. I get that. Yeah, I mean, my dad used to tell me, like, you know, hey, you know, I don't mind watching you climb the tree. I don't want to stand underneath it and, you know, like in case you're going to fall every time, I'm going to watch you do it. I just kind of want to make sure you don't like break your neck, right, if you do fall, right? So I don't mind letting you get your bumps and your bruises and hurt a little bit, right? But I still want you to be safe and okay. So I kind of understand what you're saying right there. You know, he's trying to teach me that lesson.
I was thinking how many times I've gone to God and said that. You could have done this.
You could have done this.
We don't know why he didn't.
I know.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, I mean, we're the clay and he's the potter, right? I mean, you know, it's not our job as the bowl or the vase to question what God does with us, or, you know, how he decides to work in his life or what he decides to do. And sometimes that's the hardest lesson in the world, right, to figure out is how God is going to use me. Right?
We need to remember too that he understands and knows what we're going through, even though it might not feel like it.
Right. Right. I mean, you know, like, I think Kevin had brought this up a little bit last week, you know, but one of the things I was thinking, remember the guy who's healed the pool, the guy that couldn't walk, that had been trying to go into the pool, that had been stirred around. You know, was that guy's whole purpose to be an invalid? Was to bear witness or testimony, or to show people the miracles that God can do, right? And, you know, that's sometimes a weird thing to think about in your life. Like, how is God going to use me? You know, I mean, we still have lots of choices and things that we can do in our life. You know, hopefully God wants to use me as an instrument to do good and amazing things. You know, does that mean I want to hop up and volunteer to have my legs cut off so that people can see how God's using me? Not really. I mean, I wouldn't, you know, jump on that if I had to. But if that's what God's plan for me was, who am I to argue with it? You know, I mean, so again, that's such a hard lesson. I mean, it's crazy to think about. Any other ideas about that? All right. So, I just got to thinking that Jesus is always with us, though, right? You know, even in those times we're troubled, even those times we wish he was there, when we know he could have taken care of it, right? That Jesus is there watching over us, right? You remember the footsteps poem? I think I've talked about that before. Remember, you know, you're walking with me and there's 2 steps of footsteps, and then for a while I thought you'd left me because there was only 1 pair of footsteps, but I realized looking back that was the time you carried me and that you got me through the whole part. So you're always with me. You're always with me. I am the good shepherd, right? So anyway, it just made me think about that. All right.
That's a good point you made, Ben, but also God's grace is the fact that we are to comfort and help other people through their difficult times. 2 Corinthians chapter 1 is also about that God comforts us so that we can comfort others.
Yeah.
And it's an important aspect for us to be involved in that. You know, just like if you go to a funeral, you know, it's not necessarily what you say, it's the fact that you're there to support and encourage people who are struggling at that time. So there are so many ways we can show God's grace, and by doing that.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I didn't mean to suggest that you're expected to kind of do it all on your own, and, you know, you do need other people and other support. You need the church, right? I mean, that's what we're called to do as Christians, right? Is to be around each other, to be God's hands in this world, to help people out. I think that's an amazing point to make.
I like to use the word interdependent of one another. I need you, and you need me. We all, that's the great wisdom of Jesus establishing the church, that we all need each other to help each other in this walk. And it's an awesome plan that he has. We just need to get into it.
We need to get into it, yeah. I mean, if you think you're going to do it on your own, you're going to have a tough life. I mean, you can't. You need people, right? You know, you need prayer, you need God, you need everyone. And there is that interdependency. That's an awesome point. That's really cool. Okay? All right. Good? All right, so then we get to the point, right, the big point we've been waiting for, right, where Jesus is going to raise Lazarus, and he says, take away the stone, right? That's the first part, and then that's when they tell him, no, you don't want to do that because it's going to be smelly, right? And then he reminds them, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God, right? This is the ultimate miracle. This is what you've been waiting for, right? You guys have been questioning me, grumbling, wondering, right? But now these people, maybe some of the same people that wanted to stone Jesus earlier, might be in that audience, right? Witnessing and watching what's getting ready to happen, right? So he speaks, right? Remember, like we talked about in 1 John, right? I mean, sorry, John chapter 1, not 1 John, right? Where Jesus is the Word, right? Right? And when he speaks, right, he spoke the world, the universe into existence, right? When he speaks, you know, Lazarus come out. That's all it takes. And that's all it takes for Lazarus to be raised up, to come out, and there we go. I mean, that to me is, you know, just kind of cool, right? I mean, that's, you know, kind of bringing full circle what John had talked about earlier, right, in the first chapter. I just think that that's such an amazing thing. And what do you think people's reaction was when Lazarus does come out in the grave clothes? You know, Mary and Martha.
Well, they quit crying, weren't they?
What's that?
They quit crying.
You think they quit crying? All right, I don't know. I'd be one of the person, I'd probably cry more. I'd be like, what? You know, I'd probably have a more emotional reaction. But you're probably right. There probably is some joy there. Any other ideas?
Jesus vow that they performed that miracle when they were looking for him.
Okay, right. So he probably wasn't sad anymore, right? I mean, he was probably fine, right? So when he comes out, right, and he tells them to take off the grave clothes and let him go, right? It's that simple. We don't get, you know, the reaction of the crowd. We don't get the reaction of what happens with Mary and Martha. But I would assume it'd be one of amazement, one of joy, one of happiness, one of, you know, I don't know how many other emotions that you could say. When before you thought this guy has been dead for 4 days and now he is not anymore. So Jesus does the biggest miracle, right? Biggest miracle. And so you would think there's be, oh my gosh, this is amazing, this is great. But instead, in the very next section, in 45, what happens? All right, they want to kill him. I mean, you know, you'd think it'd be, okay, wow, right? You know, Jesus just raised someone from the dead. All right, let's kill this guy, right? And it gets even worse, right? I mean, when you get into chapter 12, they not only want to kill Jesus, who they want to kill too? Lazarus. That's like one of the most uncool things ever, right? I mean, Lazarus had just been dead 4 days, and now you want to kill him again, right? That's messed up, okay? But there you go, right? So therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him, right? So some people at sea believed. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus has done, right? So again, back to the parable of the Good Shepherd. Some people know my voice, and some people will not listen to me, right? Because their hearts have been corrupted, right? They're not going to listen to me, no matter what I say. People don't want to listen to that truth, all right? So, right? No different than people today, correct? Right? Fortunately, but it's true. So we have now mention of Caiaphas, right, and his plot, right? And Caiaphas, I thought this was interesting. I hadn't noticed this before, but Caiaphas had predicted or foretold or prophesied, or I forget what the verb is, that Jesus would die, right? So, you know, whether this is a self-fulfilled prophecy that Caiaphas is trying to make come about, you know, that's what he's doing at this point, right? He's trying to make sure that he takes. So Jesus goes away. He waits in Ephraim for a little while, right? Maybe for things to calm down, right? And then he's coming back for the final Passover, right? That's where he's getting ready to come back. So here we have in 12, just to finish up the last little point today, in 12, this is the part where Mary anoints Jesus' feet with a nard, which you remember that's a very expensive perfume, and that Judas kind of complains about. What does Judas want to do with the perfume instead? All right, sell it, give it to the poor, right? And Jesus rebukes him because he says what? The poor will always be with you. I'm going to be here for a short time, right? So again, Mary has chosen the best, right? You know, that's what Mary has done again. So the Jewish leaders are trying to find Jesus, all right? So they seek people to go get him, right, to kill him, because Jesus' time is coming, right? We see what's getting ready to happen with the resurrection, with what's getting ready to happen with the crucifixion. So that's where we are. So, whew, that was a lot today. I know we covered a lot, all right? But you guys did great, all right? So Kevin's going to take over for the next couple of weeks, and then I'll try to muddle through it towards the end, okay? All right, good job today, you guys, right? 10 minutes